Hey there, my name's Sebastian, and this is Talk That Pod, a podcast where I have conversations with some of the most interesting podcasters in the world. My guest today is Drew Frohmann, creator of the Sorry About the Murder podcast. It's a fictional murder mystery with 2 seasons of highly entertaining drama set in a nice little Canadian town called Beaver Mount, Ontario, where a Zamboni driver, that's the thing that clears the ice at hockey rinks for all you non-Canadians, must solve a grisly murder. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sebastian. It's a real pleasure.
Of course. Okay, so you grew up in Wawa, Ontario, from what I understand, and that's a small town that I think clearly left a bit of a mark on you. How much of Beaver Mount is sort of autobiographical, and are there specific memories or persons from your childhood that kind of directly inspired the world of the show?
Sure, yeah. Wawa, yes, I always wanted to write a story, had a bunch of different kind of ideas for a movie story and all that, because growing up there is such a rich place, so many characters, the town itself was in such a state of flux, so many interesting things going on. And it really shaped who I am. I came down to the city and I still just feel like a small town hick. I actually saw a comedian yesterday. He put it so great because he's from, I think, St. John's, and he goes, I'm what did he say? He said, I'm small town gay, I'm big city straight. And that's totally how I feel. Always felt like small towns are so tough and rugged. I never quite fit into that. Then I come down to city, and then I was like, but I like to, like he said, I like to go camping, and people are like, whoa, that's the straightest thing ever. And it's a funny thing. So there was always that outsider thing. Anyways, yeah, Wawa was fascinating. So, but the thing is what I didn't want to do is just write, hey, and then this guy got drunk and fell into the river, and then this happened. As I feel like Trailer Park Boys already did that so well. They had a premise, a little Yogi Bear premise, and then through which they could do it. So I never really found anything. And then this sort of murder mystery idea kind of popped up. I can tell you the story of how it popped up if you want. Do you want to hear that?
Sure, yeah.
It came so funny. You remember a movie from the 80s called Gleaming the Cube? Do you know this movie?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, great.
I do. I heard you talking about that on one of the retrospectives that you did.
That's it. That's exactly. It's really simple, right? This skater boy solves a murder, which was such a funny thing. So then the idea is, what's the Canadian version? Well, a Zamboni driver solves a murder. And then it just slowly kind of built from there. And then that became, this is a way to walk around the town, get to know characters, and have things happen, but under with a really strong structure. Something has to happen. Somebody has to solve a murder.
Talk to me about the podcast cover artwork, because I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
How much of a role do you think that played in the success of the show?
I think a big role, actually. So, okay, I'll talk to you a little bit. So so an art director, you mentioned in our pre-thing that, I have a background in advertising. And so this is an art director, a fellow I've worked with. He's my favorite. He can just make anything look good. So Michel Lang, and he's from Grand Falls, New Brunswick. So he gets this. Mm-hmm. And so this is going to get into sort of weird territory. So ideally, the ideal thing was we wanted to evoke those sort of 70s, almost like Hardy Boys mysteries kind of a vibe. Small town, obviously Beaver Mount's a character in this town. So seeing the town seemed to be really important when we were exploring it. Now, the thing is where do you find oil and or acrylic painters in this day and age? When I went to OCA, those were my instructors. They're all over the place, but now they don't exist. So we looked into it. Well, it was going to be over $10,000. Well,
wow.
I can't, right. Because it has, you've seen the artwork. It's gorgeous and it's detailed and it's rich.
Yeah. So
we explored AI. Michel had never worked with AI, so he was pretty excited to use this new tool. And then I have to say this. It's not like he just did a couple of prompts and doink, here it came out. He did a massive amount of work with, is Photoshop bad? I don't think it is. It's a tool. So I would argue that's how we used it. Now, the idea of what AI and AI images now is kind of changed. It's interesting how it's changed so quickly, but that's how we created it. to evoke an idyllic, simpler time, as it were, back then. And that was our reference were old novels, those kind of things. Now, was it important? I think it was integral. I'll have to say, I'm a big believer that you have to really sweat the artwork. The artwork really has to feel like your show. And so the feel of our show has that very Stephen Leacock Vinyl Cafe vibe. It's very idyllic, homespun. So the image absolutely has to. So, and I think we nailed that. And I have to say, I know for a fact that we made these postcards we go around to events and whatnot, and I pass out these postcards, and to a person, everyone will go, "Oh, there's lots of postcards at these events."
Yeah.
And our like what Michelle made consistently, people were like, "Oh, I could see it," and it worked. So I think it was a huge. So we really sweat the artwork. We did it again for season 2, and we're in the process of season 3, and want to make sure we get it right. Now it's more complicated because this AI thing. It has a. It's funny you say that. So I don't know if you agree with this, but I was just talking to another artist about this, and he said, "Yeah, about 4 years ago, AI images." Our appetite for it was different. It was like, oh, okay. But now, we've worked on season 3 artwork, and we looked at the AI stuff we came up with, and it just has a different taste. So I think we're just going to have to bite the bullet and get a proper artist, which is what I'd way rather do. It's just a matter of who has $10,000, to pay an artist. So we'll see what we can do. But it's really interesting to bring up that artwork, because this AI thing is really everyone's taste of it has really changed in the last 5 years, right? Like you can look at a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old AI image and oh, that's like a 2023 image.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it has changed, and I think it will continue to change as the quality improves and as the controls for getting exactly what you want continue to get, fine-tuned. But I'm of the opinion that AI is just another tool that, anybody can use. And in particular, graphic designers can use as well.
Yeah.
That said, I still think that there's a human component there that AI can't quite sort of be the judge of, right? You can't. AI has no taste. AI can spit back at you what you tell it you want. That doesn't mean it's good. That doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's anything. Yeah. You as the human still have to apply sort of that layer of judgment and taste. Is this good? Is this serving the purpose that we need, whether it's podcast artwork or whatever? So yeah, that's my opinion on it. But I want to dive more into the premise of the show, which I find to be wonderfully different. It's a Quebecois Zamboni driver that has to solve a murder and get the ice ready for the game. How did you land on that specific sort of almost sitcom-like constraint? Did you ever consider a more kind of conventional mystery format?
Well, how do you mean a more conventional, how do you mean by more conventional? Interesting you say that.
Yeah, I mean, I found that the constraint that you put on the show to have it in this small town, have it be centered around this very sort of quirky character, I found that unconventional.
Huh. Well, I'll tell you, a part of it was an attempt to sort of tighten the dramatic screws, so that it wasn't just, hey, a person kind of floats around a town solving mysteries. It seemed interesting to make it that he has to, and it's his welfare. So instantly that makes it dramatically interesting. This guy, his problem is a different one. And what seemed really funny and really Canadian was the idea of the French. I'm from Toronto. The Toronto-Montreal thing is like, that's 200-300 years old. Like that's
right.
Proper thing. There's all sorts of dark layers and light layers to all that kind of stuff. But that just seemed like it had so much inherent tension. And and I also love the idea this is a very Canadian thing, but maybe other people understand it. There's a funny thing about the French Canadian accent, and you know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
almost like a hillbilly accent. It's very easy to sound stupid, and it's very easy to underestimate somebody with a French Canadian accent, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I've done it.
of course, we all have. There's an inherent arrogance, which I thought that's really funny. The idea that the smartest person in town is actually the most assuming, this French Canadian fellow with this accent, with this thick accent, which also sonically is just, I can't stop. You can't stop listening to it. It's just the best. And so that seemed a really funny thing, that he's the genius in town. He's like, you know what it's like? Speaking of, it's like Columbo. It was, I always kind of had Columbo in my head.
Interesting.
For this. He's sort of an unassuming genius who's never lets it out how smart he really is, because that would, you know, so he's unassuming, but he's also pretty calculating. And that's a thing I got to watch. Can't make him be too, cause then I think that makes him not just unlikable, but I think that betrays, although small towns, there's no shortage of social calculation in small towns, as I'm sure you probably know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've also seen you say that small town Canada has kind of a unique mix of quaint politeness and casual violence.
Yeah.
And I think that
was a huge one. That's where and it wasn't the original name, actually. That was a big one. I'll tell you something. The name was really important. The original name, I think our working one, was 2 Minutes for Murder.
Okay. Which
also was kind of cute, right? Oh, it's a penalty, you know, and it makes it like, oh, murder's so serious, but it's also kind of quaint. But, you know, that got confusing because people are like, oh, it's a 2-minute show. And also then my hockey friends didn't get the reference 2 minutes, it's a penalty. So I'm like, okay, this isn't good enough. And then in some kind of thing a deck I'd been creating to try to sell it, it was just sitting there, sorry if you got murdered. And then it just kind of went, oh, those are the two things. There's politeness and violence in the title, which again, I would say if anyone's watching this thing about their show, you have to get that title. You got to sweat the title. It's so important that ideally you say the title and people go, oh, and they get it.
No, it's the title you came up with is perfect. It's so to the point and so, you know, it's intriguing also. You know, it makes people wonder, what is this all about?
Yeah.
I'm wondering also, you know, throughout the show, it kind of feels like a bit of a love letter to that kind of Canadian life.
Definitely.
Was the show always meant to be kind of a mix of funny and affectionate, or did that balance kind of come out as you were writing the show?
That's funny you say that. So the night that me and our friends kind of just popped in our head and I was kind of rolling it around, that weekend I was in a very strange state, actually. It was very strange. I don't usually do this, but I was in a weird thing and people couldn't talk to me and I was acting all weird and I had this thing rolling, and for some reason it seemed my first instinct is always a little more full contact, like Human Begun. The first show we did is pretty loud and brash and more Rick and Morty. This one didn't. It had to feel more idyllic. Stephen Leacock made sense. The quaintness, the quaintness had to be amped up. The da-da-da-da-dee, once upon a time, that was really important. So just that took, that pretty early on, that became an important part of it. And then other little parts of it started to grow out of that. And then I had to learn how to write a murder mystery because that I'd never written one before. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Sorry About the Murder is a scripted audio drama with full sound design. You've got original music. You've got a really strong voice cast. And you're coming from a world of advertising, audio, and voice direction. How would you say that some of those kind of skills and commercial instincts shaped the way that you built this show?
I'll say that, I mean, working in the advertising side, I worked on the audio side on purpose for 20 years. I love writing radio. It's just writing audio is just the best. So I honed my skills pretty hard. I now think I write with audio in mind. So that came in really handy. All sorts of tips and tricks that you pick up doing that is, you know, how you can establish tone with different sounds or music, transitions, how you get in and out of scenes. More importantly, how you get people to see, where we are, who's there, what's happening. It's a lot harder than it seems. And that came in very handy. I'll say that. And then the other one is it's pretty handy to be associated working with a world-class studio. I can just be ambitious with the sound. I can just, the bear comes out of the snow and then somebody hits it with snowballs and then it throws a refrigerator and like right there, that's a ton of work. And
Yeah.
And so I could do that stuff. So that's pretty, it's a pretty nice little luxury. Thanks to Steve and everyone at Tattoo.
Yeah, it certainly shows. Each episode is fairly short. I'd say it's kind of really tightly constructed.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your writing process when you're sort of building each episode. Are you writing the whole story and then breaking it out into smaller pieces? Are you sort of writing episode by episode?
So it's funny, the short episodes, I actually originally wrote the first season as one chunk and it was, I think, about 45 minutes. And then I was trying to think, am I going to write am I going to do a full Murder, She Wrote? We're going to do a full 45-minute, that's what every episode is. And I was thinking, that's going to crush me. And Tom, the narrator I have, he's a guy I worked with, speaking of in advertising, brilliant writer himself. And he said, yeah, break it up into chapters. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then that changed. You go back and you retool little mini cliffhangers, which is so fun. But that changed everything. And then this one story became this thing of chapters. So that was a big change. And then, boy, if we're going to get into the writing process, Sebastian is so funny. I don't know if other writers struggle as much, but I got to say, okay, so here's how I start. I generally start. I got a whole bunch of different pages. As my days go by and stuff, somebody will say something. I'll be sitting with a small town friend, and they'll talk about the time their canoe went off the falls and this, that, and the other thing. I'll pull up my phone and I'll just write that into notes. So I compile. I've got a Word doc for possible Canadian motives. I've got a Word doc for just small town stories. I've got a Word doc for phrases. I have all these different Word docs or actually Google Docs now, and I drop them in there. And then every once in a while, I just kind of go through them and go, oh, yeah, no, that guy, the guy who had his jaw wired shut. Oh, yeah, okay, let's try to, and you put it into the back of your head as you write. You kind of go, okay, maybe we'll pull him or her out.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And what I found is because it's a murder mystery, I plot it out. So I do, it starts here, here's either the murder or the reveal. And I do plot it out in bullet point form on a Google Doc kind of thing. And I work on that for a few weeks. I work on that. I work on the whole thing, and I try to figure out the clues. And of course, most of it doesn't make sense. So you double back and you try to, twist and turns and all that. So I work on that for several weeks. Actually, this season, I pulled in a good friend of mine from Wawa, Alan Belanger, who's one of the funniest guys I know and a hilarious storyteller. And his father was a fisherman. He's a Wawa guy. So I pulled him in for this because he works at the M&R, the Ministry of Natural Resources up in Sudbury. So he knows. So we used a lot of that knowledge to build the plot for season 3.
Cool.
So yeah, weeks of that back and forth on Google Docs with Alan. And then I start writing. And the first two seasons I would scribble on. I got a big pile of scrap paper that I steal from Tattoo, old scripts and stuff. And I scribble on that. And I scribble and I scribble. And I have to say, I don't know about other people, but that first draft is hell. I hate it because you're just scrawling. It's terrible. None of it's any good. And you got to try to shut your brain off from going, this is fucking terrible. And so you have to just keep going. And it's weeks of that. Here's a major difference between advertising writing and this long form, which I'm coming to learn, because advertising is like sprinting it's like it's 100-meter dash, brap, 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 right? You come up with, we'll sit in a day and come up with 30 ideas for a thing. Then we'll go off and execute. But this is very, very different. But when you're writing short ideas, if it's a good one, you get a little dopamine hit. You go, oh, that's pretty funny. Oh, that one's pretty good. Okay, that one sucks. But you get these pop, pop, pop. But I find through that first draft, you don't get any of that for weeks. You just get, this is terrible. and it might not be terrible, but you don't know. Right now, it feels like it is because it doesn't make sense. You know, is he walking into an alley? Is that good? I don't know. And then Douglas says this. Fuck. You know, and so I write the whole thing like that. And then I go back. So the first 2 seasons, I did it scribbly. And this one and I also ate a lot of ice cream, which this one, I didn't eat any ice cream, which is huge. But the other thing I did differently is what I did is I tried this time, and it worked pretty well. I just texted myself. I just kind of did voice text, and I said, okay, Frenchie goes here, and then she goes there, and then this, that. And then I just took that, loaded it in, and dropped that into, I use Fade In as my software. And then that became my first draft. And then now, at least now I'm editing, and now I can go in and go, okay, that makes sense. That doesn't. I go back to the plot. I found a bunch of plot holes. I make notes. I rejig the plot. Then I go back to my draft, and then I rewrite. Oh, another plot hole, go back to the plot. And I kind of do that back and forth. And then by about, I'd say draft 5 or 6, now I get to the good part where I get to sit there and then go, oh, and then Chiefus or Dougie says, and then I'm literally making myself laugh as I write. And that's the fun part. And now it's slowly, and now I have season 3. I have a draft that I was good enough, at least complete enough, that I thought that I sent out to beta readers. They've given me notes. Now I got to go and fix that stuff because there was lots of really good, valuable notes. So I'm really, really close. So that's my writing process, such as it is. I'm still learning how to become a marathon runner, a long writer. It's so different from advertising, which was, yeah.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Now the show falls into the scripted fiction podcast category, which, in my opinion, is arguably one of the hardest formats to grow an audience for.
I agree.
Because Discovery, I feel like, tends to favor other categories like true crime, interviews, news.
Yeah.
Tell me about what your initial promotional strategy was right out of the gate.
So one of the things, I had a bit of a leg up, I think, because I had already done that other show, Human Be Gone. I'd done a season of that. So through that, I'd gotten to join Fable and Folly, the Fable and Folly Network, which is a fantastic network of audio fiction creators. I think there's like 70. I think there's like 120 to 130 shows on that network, and it's exclusively, and I think it might be the only one at this point that's exclusively audio fiction. So I got to learn a lot about how to market audio fiction from that first one. Then I applied that to this. And being part of the network was super helpful because then one of the things I would say, you got to create a trailer. And a trailer is its own art. It's its own art form, and you really have to sweat that trailer. It's got to be 60 or less, I think. And it's really, it has to, just like the artwork, it has to let you know, I think it has to let you know what the dramatic problem is. What's the story? It's the story of a woman who's trying to get back to Earth to save her child or whatever. That has to be in there somehow. Doesn't have to be that directly conveyed, but we have to know who the protagonist is and what their problem is. And then, okay, now I know what the story is. If it's just a vibe, I find those trailers, they don't do anything for me. Now, if there's a mystery, if it's like, okay, what's the floating ship above, New York? Okay, that's a mystery. I'm hooked. But when it's like, it's set in the 17th century, and some people are just kind of hanging out. For me, I don't think that's enough for a trailer. Anyway, so I really sweat the trailer and made sure it really nailed the thing. So I think we had an effective trailer. And then Fable and Folly, I could air it. They were, that's part of their thing is you can air it on the back of other shows when they don't have ad space that's empty. And that was a big one. So I'll say that. The big one that social media used to be valuable, and now it's very limited value, unless for a couple of exceptions. My understanding is if you're doing something in the LGBTQ space, if your character is your protagonist, if it's about that culture, Tumblr is amazing. Apparently, like it hasn't helped me, but apparently in that queer space, the engagement is massive.
Interesting.
So I know a few creators who've used Tumblr really well. TikTok, I guess it depends. I think it depends on your thing. It's a content vampire. I don't have the bandwidth to create animation to make the videos.
Sure.
And I still haven't gotten, I have to in season 3, I have to just get over the talking into the phone. Hey guys, I'm doing this. Hey guys, my understanding, everyone tells me in social media that people love to see and feel the creator. So I just have to get over myself. It's a Gen X thing. So that's one. But I will say the most effective to me by a long shot were feed swaps. So that's, massively effective. Because, here's one of the things I learned, and I still think this is true. True crime, even though people who listen to true crime almost never listen to murder mystery audio fiction. There's almost there's a wall there. It's very siloed. And audio fiction is almost its own space, and there's very little jumping over. Right.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because the two experiences are really different. Listening to true crime, I can just kind of vibe with it. I don't have to understand everything that happened. It's just mostly this, terrifying drone, and this happened, and then a guy came into the room, and I don't have to know all the details. I think I just gotta feel like I'm in good hands and the story's moving on. But if I zone out while I'm doing the dishes or something, it's okay. So I think that's a big part of it. I think that's especially true with two guys talking about movies or politics and stuff. I think that's more, you're just kind of chilling with these three people that you like. I think so many podcasts, which was what talk shows used to be. It's a very similar thing. Just, I like their vibe. So they're going to talk about shitty movies. Okay. And I'll put that on, or I like these 3 celebrities and they're going to talk about whatever. But audio fiction is way more active. You have to keep track of, you're tracking a story. You have to concentrate way more. I find I can't do chores and listen to a good audio fiction show. I think I like it. For me, going for a walk, driving, those are the only 2 things I can do while listening to an audio fiction story. I can vacuum or do whatever, anything else if I'm just listening to a couple of ladies talk about dating or whatever.
Right.
So I think that's a huge reason. It's a different investment, and it's a different desire.
Okay. Now, because your show has distinct seasons, so you sort of naturally into the show, there's a wait between, season 1, 2, and now you're working on 3.
Yeah.
How do you feel, how do you think about sort of sustaining that kind of listener community? How do you, sort of bridge the gap between seasons for people that, have subscribed to you, but maybe haven't heard from your podcast in a while? How do you keep them engaged? How do you, what tools are you using to do that, if any?
Yeah, well, that's a big challenge for audio fiction, is exactly that. Because as you know, the podcast, as you know very well, right? Consistency is probably maybe the biggest factor, or one of the biggest.
No question.
Right. So, and we fall down on that. So, ideally, if you had a content, a little factory that can just kind of pump out little mini episodes or little updates. So I have a newsletter that I need to feed better. I'm gonna get on Patreon. Patreon looks like you can basically do a newsletter inside of Patreon, so I might just flip my stuff over to there. But that's the way I talk to fans. I have a mailing list, so I send them updates. So we're doing this, we're doing that. Hey, can you help me with this? Like, hey, which artwork do you like better? I got to do more of that kind of stuff. But and then the feed swaps are an okay way to do that. They're better for finding listeners of other shows. Let me get back to that just real quick on the audio fiction side. I found feed swaps with other audio fiction. The more similar to your show, the better. Because people who listen to audio fiction will listen to more.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I've done that where I've filled, right now I'm open to anyone with feed swap, and I go out and ask too. And it's a way to kind of give the feed a little bit of life. Hey guys, well, they're working on season 3. This would be the opening thing. Here's a show I really like. Here's an episode from it. But what I should be doing is more updates on there. Hey guys, we're working on season 3. Come here, check this out. Here's some behind the scenes stuff. Here's Drew eating ice cream or whatever. But it is a real frustration. I wish I could crank up more. I got all sorts. We all have, all our creators. We sit there and we go, oh my God, I would love to do this. I would love to do that. But it's an indie thing. It's an indie. I'm sure you have the same struggle. It's just time.
There's only so many hours in the day, but it's interesting that you bring up, the sort of behind the scenes content and how you think about maybe letting your listeners in on the process a bit more. I was just talking to a couple of other podcasters about this, and they also strongly feel that, if they had the time, they'd want to do some more of that content to let people in a little bit more. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is podcast discoverability and how, at least to me, it feels like YouTube is starting to become maybe the number one discovery platform for podcasts, even for audio first listeners. Has that changed the way you think about presenting the podcast at all, given that, it's purely audio?
In season 2, I was sniffing around YouTube, and the other creators, the audio fiction creators, anyways, were getting nothing. Now, I haven't looked at it in the last few months, so you're probably, the fact that you're saying that probably means that there's been a sea change. So I'm going to write that down. I'm literally going to write that down right now. I'm going to look into it. So, wow, if it's changed that much, then I'm definitely going to see. So it hasn't yet, but it's definitely going to affect my plan for season 3. Which is going to launch on Twitter today. So that's exciting.
Oh, yep. There you go.
Yep.
I also noticed you offer early ad-free access through an Apple Podcast subscription. Yep. How do you sort of navigate that tension between growing that free audience and kind of building a paying subscriber base? What's sort of your philosophy about monetization for a podcast like this?
Well, because I'm an average, so it's 2 things. I have no problem with asking for money, and it's a tricky thing. The expectation of getting stuff for free is frustrating as a creator because you're like, well, it's not free. I'm paying real money. Like, we talked about $10,000 to an artist.
That's right.
We're still paying that, so that's frustrating for sure. That said, I don't. I subscribe to vanishingly few shows, to my shame. Mostly my friends, just hilarious. Other people are way better at it, and maybe I should get better at that too. What I wish though, I wish I could give them more. I wish I could give more stuff to those subscribers. I like Midnight Burger. I think it looks like from the outside they do a wonderful job. They're constantly throwing little tidbits all over, so it makes sense to go, oh yeah, I want to get behind that paywall because I'm getting all sorts of fun stuff. And that was my plan, but life kind of gets in the way. So all I was doing, all I could offer was, okay, you can get it early, which is valuable to some folks. I put out an omnibus episode of both seasons, so you can just kind of take it all in one go. But I was hoping to throw mini-sodes. I had an idea of a whole mini series, which would be amazing. Because there's all sorts of little what shows are playing on in Beaver Mount. What's the most popular radio show we're going to have featured in season 3? Frenchie, maybe he's working on a murder mystery himself. So what does that sound like? That kind of stuff.
Okay.
So not very well so far. My hope my intent for season 3 is to figure out Patreon properly and to really, because what I've found is that listeners do want to support indie artists, and I think it's a bit of a badge. I think there's a bit of that going on. I like this art. I like this stuff, and if I like the person behind it or people behind it, I'd like to support them. So I need to leverage that better. I come from an advertising background, so I've managed to get a little bit of sponsorship, but that's a tricky thing. As you know, if you plug too many ads in it, as much as advertising has tried to reinvent itself, it's still the interruption model.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to watch the thing that you like, but you gotta sit through some idiot telling you about, TELUS.
Sure.
So you can only do that so much, especially when you got little wee episodes. I gotta really watch it. I've had a few folks go, that's a lot of interruptions, and that's really fair.
Now, from the promotional side, it can be a lot to handle for just, one person that's responsible for promoting the show. If you sort of had access to, I don't know, maybe custom built software or some sort of tool that could solve your biggest, I guess, promotional marketing challenge, what do you think that tool would do?
Yeah, I wrote that down. I thought, oh, what a good one. My first thought was a robot that looks like me that can talk into the phone and go, "Hey guys."
We're getting there, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. Maybe I should just do. Nah, that'd be terrible. I don't know. I was thinking, yeah, if there was an AI that animated clips for social, like what I want is I want a bunch. I want my two buddy animators to work for me full time who just animate my stuff because I know exactly who I'd hire for that. Maybe a robot that does PR that can help me get press and create events and stuff, which is, yeah, I don't have a great answer for you, Sebastian, on that. I don't have a software that I wish. I mean, this AI is kind of being that dream software, but it's an ethical thing. It's like, it's helping replace artists, which, I mean, that sucks.
Now, I just want to talk about sort of how you feel about podcasts in general and how you feel your show kind of fits into the larger landscape. So, in particular, how do you think comedy in the podcasting space allows us to kind of dissect and poke fun at, some of the things that you poke fun at in the show, like, cultural stereotypes and other things, sort of maybe even more effectively than in video or traditional TV?
Oh, wow. Is comedy more or less sort of effective in podcasts? I think it's just different, but I think it does the same thing. Yeah, I think yeah, comedy is the court jester. So many times it tells the uncomfortable truth in a way that it lets you laugh, so it lets it sink in, makes it kind of lets you gets it past your normal wall. So it does that. Comedy and podcasting is so different. Like if you go to if you browse comedy, it's mostly, marquee comedians talking to each other about their other podcasts, because she's got a podcast and he hasn't, and all they do is talk about each other's. That's what I find. It's just, I'm finding, I'm losing interest in all those because they're all just talking about each other's podcasts. I don't know who's on who. But that said, there's other ones that are great, and if they're genuinely funny. So that's one way, but that's the same thing though. They're just doing the same thing. They're using comedy. Man, is it different? I don't know. Like sitcoms are its own really distinct art form, audio fiction. What's funny about that is I think you'll see this too. It's interesting that almost all audio fiction, not all, but a lot, they do roughly 30-minute episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They could do, Midnight Burger does 3-hour ones and then an 18-minute or whatever. But isn't it interesting that all of us who grew up on TV do these stories in 30-minute increments? Isn't that it's such an interesting...
Seems kind of baked in, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think now TikTok is blowing that paradigm up. So who knows? And also podcasts can be 3 hours long, but those are almost always long form discussions. But there are movie length audio fiction. There's some amazing ones out there that are 2 hours that I can stop and I can pick up later. That's always an option. But I do find that, and that was my first thought too, was this is going to be like Murder, She Wrote. It's interesting that we ape the rhythms from the past. But that's not an answer to your question. I don't know. I think it does the same thing in podcasts as it does everywhere else.
It feels to me also like we're living through a very unique moment, sort of, where Canadian identity feels more politically charged than it has in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we've got questions about sovereignty and cultural nationalism, you know, the relationship with the US.
Yeah.
So a show like Sorry About the Murder, it feels to me very unapologetically Canadian and lovingly Canadian as well.
Yeah.
Given the environment that we're in now, do you feel any sort of extra weight or responsibility in that? Or is going to Beaver Mount kind of a refuge from all of that noise?
Yeah, it's really funny, Sebastian. It's a great one. When I was first sort of noodling season 3, it was right during the elbows up stuff. And I had a couple of friends say, "Don't you touch it. Don't you go near it." And that's exactly
Interesting.
your point. It's a refuge. That place is a different place. It's a Canada we aspired, we remember it with rose-colored glasses, but it's the Canada we aspires to. It's refuge. And do not go near it. So that's one. But I'll say this, I literally, this is one of the things that I have on my to-do list. So the artwork, geez, where do I? Oh, I know where it is. Watch this. So this has been one of the most popular ones we've had, and it's just simple. It's just a leaf, and it says sorry.
That's awesome.
Right? Great. Okay. Great. So there's your vote. I wonder, it's because I walk around with this. In the States, they love it. But in Canada, so every once in a while, I get people go, "What does that mean?"
Really?
And like it's a political question. And I've in my head, and I've goofed around with Michelle, and we're developing these now. Is just a leaf saying sorry? Do people want to, like, it hasn't been as popular recently, and I don't know that people want to walk around just going sorry. So I wonder if this thing needs a little drop of blood, a little indication that it's sorry about something. And you know what? I'm going to send you the designs, and you can give me your vote too. I don't know the answer, but it's because of exactly what you just said. I don't know. Like, I think a few years ago, people would have been fine with, we're Canadian, we say sorry, but people don't feel like that anymore. I think they got a little more of the hockey, we're all a little more, elbows up, a little more hockey, a little less sorry.
Yeah, I think a lot of Canadians have in the last few years kind of felt their spines stiffen up a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel also that there's a lot of conversation about the intimacy of podcasting, sort of versus what you mentioned earlier, the kind of quick hit nature of social media where you've got, 10, 15-second clips dominating everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious where you see kind of that deeply crafted, highly produced audio like yours kind of fitting into the average person's media diet. Do you feel like audio fiction has a lot of room to grow?
I think there's definitely a place for it. Economically, who can say, and this is an indie thing, so it doesn't matter because artists don't get paid anyways. That's not what this is. I think one of the things I love about audio fiction is way closer to indie music, indie art, But there's a lot of artists here, like proper people who are just doing it because they're compelled for the love of the game.
Yeah.
Very few of us are making any money at it. And that's pretty awesome. And that's where you get the quality stuff, like proper art. In the same way that true crime does this, like I was saying before, it kind of washes over you. Like understanding that, and I've come to understand this with the show, a lot of it's just vibes. People just want to hang out in the town. Oh, there's another quirky character. How good is the murder mystery? I'm trying to make it as good as I can, but I think a lot of people don't much care. And so I think it seems to me audio fiction, I hear a lot of people, they listen to it when they work out or when they're doing other stuff. So they do that thing. So I think I think of it that way, that I'm not trying to yell at them, although I'm yelling all this whole time, it sounds like. But it's much more of a letting it wash over people and let them sort of vibe with it. So it's a slightly different storytelling than, say, certainly than a lot of television used to be, which is just screaming at you. hoping desperately you don't turn the thing. And TikTok is much more about, or most of it is about, trying to jump out the screen into your face. Some of it is about, we're going to quiet down. Well, I think that's where, I think quieter sort of, that's not to say it's less intense, but I think I think that's where we sit, is I don't think we're the star of someone's, how would you say? I think we accompany people. I think audio fiction is more of an accompaniment.
So as you know, obviously I talk to a lot of podcasters. I interact with a lot of podcasters online. I see what they're saying. I see what podcast listeners are saying as well. And I feel like there's a lot of hand-wringing about sort of the topic of podcast saturation. There's millions of shows now and they're all competing for attention. But I feel like, genuinely well-crafted original shows like yours still wind up finding an audience. So do you have a message to aspiring podcast creators who feel like maybe it's too late to break through?
Yeah, I think it would be the same kind of advice you'd give a composer, a musician, a band, an artist. I mean, you don't have any control over that. What you do is you got to make what you need to make, as honestly and as truthfully as you can. I would say that. Okay, here's a piece of advice: don't try to appeal to an audience. It's hard enough to write a story that people will connect to, and honestly, the most valuable tool you have is whatever's inside you. So as truthful as you can be, as pure as you can be, as far as how you make the thing. That's what people respond to, especially in the audio fiction land. It's if you have a celebrity actor, great, but you still have to be truthful. You still got to write a truthful stories. The stories are still really hard to write because they demand truth and they demand honesty from the creators. So I would say, if you've got a story you need to tell the damn story. And I would say, even if you just squeeze out one episode, it's a thing. You've made a thing, and now you're in that club. You're not in the club of the people who talk about making it. You've made a thing, and now there's a real power on forward momentum. And even if I would even say this honestly, because this certainly was I struggled with this mightily, and I still do. That was a real big dragon I had to slay, was stop talking about doing it and make the goddamn thing. And by hook or by crook, whatever it is, beg, borrow, steal. But once you start making something, suddenly people kind of go, oh, they're on a track. They're making something. Okay, well, maybe I'll help them. They're somehow a little more prone to, they're somehow a little more prone to help people who are like, oh, when they say they're going to do something, they actually do. They follow through. They made a thing. Oh, okay, well, now they're saying they're making a second thing. Okay, well, now I know that I'll help out because I know that they said they made a thing and they made it. So now they're going to make it. So I think I know you want to make it just exactly so, but if you don't have the money for it, then you just make the goddamn thing. And then you keep going and you learn as you go, especially young. You just have to make the imperfect and keep forward momentum. I think is more valuable than getting it done exactly right. I think that's a really good one, because hopefully you look back at your first stuff and you cringe anyways. Ideally, you're growing as an artist, So that's definitely one for me. I think that would help. Just make the goddamn wit by yourself, voice it by yourself, whatever you got to do, because you can always remake it with actors or whatever. But now you got a thing, you can send a deck or a brochure about your idea, but it just doesn't have the same power. If it's just sitting on your hard drive, it's just an idea on your hard drive. It's worthless. It's worthless to the world. But you made a thing, and now people have to contend with it. Now you got to learn how to place it on a podcast, and now you get to have all these other conversations about it. You get to learn all this other stuff, and now you're in that club. You're in the club of you make things, and it's a great club to be in. And people will treat you differently now that you're in the club that you make things, as opposed to just talk about it.
Good advice. Okay, Drew, final 2 questions. First, what are 3 podcasts you'd recommend?
One I absolutely love. He's a guy. It turns out he's Canadian. I didn't know it at the time. He's got a new one called Harvey and Hell. His last one was Milkman of St. Gaps, which was just hilarious. It's this milkman. It's sort of Newfoundland, but sort of not. And he's really nice, Howie. But he may or may not be a serial killer. So his new one, Harvey and Hell, is an agent who goes down and he goes down into the desert, in the American desert. And it's sort of during the satanic panic of the 80s. And it turns out that one of the things is actually true. And so it gets weird again. So I love that show. This one is an audio fiction, although he's got episodes that I'm really enjoying. It's a show called Sick Man Talking. And it's a guy. He's actually a voiceover artist. He's racked with all sorts of illnesses. And so the original intent of the show was that it's him talking about all sorts of things, him musing on all sorts. He's a fascinating guy, and the chronic pain has given him an entirely different outlook on life. So you want to talk about raw honesty. But in the course of making it, he started to make these things that I've been actually asking him to separate them and turn them into their own show. These, I guess, apparently years ago, he lives in Newmarket, Ontario, which again was like one of those most boring towns of all time, right? And so that's part of the humor is how he bought a fake cop car. He bought an old cop car on an auction. So for a few years, he was driving around with a fake cop car, and then so he created this whole character as a fake cop. And so he has the Fake Cop Chronicles of Newmarket, which I'm really enjoying. They're very noir, and he's got this voice, and it's amazing. That's one. What's another? You know what? I've been working so goddamn hard. I haven't been listening to any new ones. Give Me Away, I really liked. That was a good one. That's another audio fiction one. Hanapocalypse is another one. That's a great one. That's it's a zombie after the apocalypse, but she's kind of living her best on life. She's the last zombie in this apocalyptic world, and it's it just kind of follows her around, and then she kind of stumbles into these different human compounds and stuff, and that was a fun one. That was to me like a great hang. I liked her, and so I liked following her around. That was one of those that I couldn't tell you really what happened, but I just liked hanging out with her. Interesting. That's a type of writing. It can be hard to do.
Perfect. Okay. And finally, where can people find you online?
Ideally, just, take out your little thing, your Spotify Pocket Casts, and type in Sorry About the Murder, and subscribe there. I would say there. And then I'm on Instagram at Sorry About the Murder. I'm on Facebook because it seems, my folks it's a Gen X. It's got a Gen X millennial vibes. So Facebook's a big one for me. At Sorry About the Murder.
Great. Okay, Drew, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. That was wonderful. I love the questions.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Talk That Pod. Make sure to follow us on all the social places. Just search for Talk That Pod. And if you're not subscribed yet, this podcast is also available on YouTube at Talk That Pod Show. Also, if you liked what you heard, tell your friends about it. And if you really liked it, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you're a podcaster who wants to come on the show, go to talkthatpod.net and submit a request. Finding great podcasts is hard. That's why you should also check out Find That Pod. It's a podcast recommendation newsletter I write every week, bringing you 5 amazing new podcasts you should listen to. Subscribe today at findthatpod.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.